please welcome my regular guests, Ben.
Hi, everybody. 3, 2, 1, explosion or consequence.
Exactly. And Coqui, can you top that?
No, I cannot. But I can say that we live in a world with trees, and trees absorb carbon emissions. But the whole universe lives in a universe of anti-trees. Keep that in mind.
Trees that soak up oxygen and produce carbon dioxide, and yet humans are still able to breathe.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, because humans breathe carbon dioxide in this world.
And yet ammonium sulfate, or sulfide, whichever it was, the stink bomb still... But no. Anyway, Alex, if you want to pass to me.
And yes, because they don't know that you're on this week, James. Please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello there, this is James S. Prophet, James 1978, and the computer is our strength. With its guidance we cannot fail. All hail the mighty computer.
Exactly. And if you haven't guessed at home by now, audience, well, you'd be quite stupid because it's in the title for one. This week we are discussing the Ice Warriors.
Dyslexics, blind people, check your privilege.
There you go.
Jamie, could you just look over there with that strange man you've never met before? That'd be quite right. Thank you.
Claws are totally normal, and when it comes to Stone Age, like people frozen in ice, those metal claws. Yeah, that's especially when they only have 2 fingers. That's totally normal.
Yes, people do talk about that in relation to the Ice Warriors, that what the fuck does that conversation mean? How could they think the things that they think? Especially, I think the script was written where you weren't supposed to get quite such a good view, or they hadn't... Well, the thing is, though, that they are actually green when we see them, and they were green even in black and white. But never mind, anyway. The Ice Warriors, written by Brian Hales, directed by Derek Martinez. In the distant future, Britannica Space senior control technician Jan Garrett and her staff struggle to control an ionizer they are using to slow the progress of glaciers rolling over Britain. Leader Clint is convinced they can avert a new ice age, but the group knows they are only a few hours away from being forced to abandon the base. Tensions rise when Penley, a maverick scientist who has defected from the team, is mentioned. The remaining senior scientist, Arden, is on the glacier searching for archaeological finds when he discovers an armoured man within a block of ice. Arden and his colleagues dig the Iceman from the glacier. 2 scavengers observe their actions, the anti-technology store and Penley, who live in the tundra. When one of Arden's team is killed in an avalanche, the other 2 head back to base with the Iceman. Store, too, is injured in the avalanche. A brilliantly tense story, if, like so many, a little long. This is one of the better base under siege adventures, and, of course, introduces yet another now iconic Doctor Who monster. The music is eerie, and the futuristic world it portrays is well realised, and with some interesting science to boot. This week's fun facts are that Penley is played by Peter Sallis, best known as the voice of Wallace in Wallace and Gromit, while Varga is played by Bernard Bresslaw, best known for the Carry On films. And without further ado, Ben, your thoughts on the Ice Warriors?
Yeah, the computer, if you guys haven't heard this episode before, it's quite interesting, because the computer actually says, please help me, oh god, why am I still here? Seriously. Like, in the background of the beginning part of this episode, it's like the computer is trying to convince itself to keep going and continue its job and not actually take a holiday. Also, I think the overall arc where Jamie just randomly, survives a fatal wound. Okay, fine, whatever. Also, apparently bears in Doctor Who Universe are not very nice.
I wouldn't want to be near a bear, like a grizzly bear or something. I think they don't like being surprised, I know that much.
Yes, to quote...
Especially anti-bears.
to quote Benedict Cumberbatch as Alan Turing, "Oh no, I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun you."
There you go.
Imitation game reference there for those at home. But yes, Ben, continue.
Yes. Also, I kind of there's a lot of subtext with this episode where the Doctor just shows up, and initially the guy in charge is like, "It's okay, guys. I have no plan. Let the Doctor take over." Versus, being at the airport and everyone was like, "No."
Go. Can I just say what a relief that was? Yes, this episode has the trope of the tin pot little bureaucrat who would rather let the world be destroyed by glaciers than get over his own ego and his own pride. But thank the great holy donkey, he wasn't accused of sabotage or murder or collaborating with the Ice Warriors. We got through an entire 6-part serial, although parts 2 and 3 are reconstructed, without ever once hearing Patrick Troughton cry, "Why won't somebody listen to me?"
Jamie, how come someone won't listen to me?
Yes, no, as I say, this was my basic point when I was arguing about this on Facebook quite a few months ago now. Yes, it's realistic that when you suddenly arrive in a classified base, you're going to be accused of X, Y, and Z if you just happen to turn up after somebody's been murdered, or when a disease strikes the base. Yes, you're going to be suspected, but it doesn't make necessarily. But there is a reason why it's called fiction. If everyone who was at risk of being murdered just called the police or what have you, that there wouldn't be a story. It's definitely not a story when we're having it every bloody week. So yes, it was just a refresh. Even though they still had to have the tin pot bureaucrat trope because otherwise they can't come. It was just such a relief to go through an entire serial without the Doctor being suspected of collaborating with the Ice Warriors or murdering the scientists or what have you, sabotaging the ionizer.
Okay, I haven't even gone over to Coqui yet. Coqui, your thoughts on this episode?
There are a lot of reasons to laugh at it. There really are. But I did find it thoroughly enjoyable. It was tense. It was, I just liked the story. I liked the dialogue. I didn't get the leader. He knew that the computer's judgment was so flawed, but at the same time, he refused to act against it. But whatever, that's the whole other thing. But I liked it a lot. I'm trying to think of something iconic. Well, I don't know. Just science. Yeah, like I said, there are a lot of reasons to laugh, and some of the science behind it. Oh, it's normal for us, but fatal to an alien, because apparently all aliens have the same physiology. For all we know, that could have been what they breathe normally, but whatever.
No, they did establish that Mars is, because the atmosphere of Mars is primarily composed of nitrogen.
Which isn't true.
But going by what they knew in the 1960s, or what they thought they knew in the 1960s, the whole point was, but they probably got that wrong as well, that there would be a lethal, the assumption would be there would be a lethal chemical reaction inside the blood of any species that primarily breathes nitrogen. Just as the reason why cyanide is lethal is that it has, I believe, correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong, people who know toxicology, I believe the reason why cyanide is lethal, carbon monoxide, let's go with carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is lethal because it attaches itself to the hemoglobin, and it doesn't, so the blood becomes useless. it can't transport oxygen anymore. So if the stink bomb that they used has the same effect on nitrogen breathing life, and the leader actually what the other people in the base actually pointed out. You've got absolutely no way of knowing if it'll work. It's a total assumption. Yes, that's one of the themes of it. It's a risk that I'm willing to take.
But
which was played up very much at the end.
But
I guess oh, go ahead.
Oh, my point is, in Doctor Who, the end never justifies the means, and in this episode it does, which is crazy. Like, he has a freaking gun that's like, well, hey, Victoria, if this is wrong, I'm going to kill everyone on the base, but that's okay. What the hell?
Yes.
Taking risks was a big deal. And there was that sort of semi-technophobic message that a computer would be unable to take risks, like that's impossible to program or whatever, and therefore we shouldn't trust computers. But at this point, I've kind of given up pointing out technophobia in Doctor Who because that just seems to be a recurring theme. What wasn't a recurring theme was racism. Because we've got the Tibetans and Toberman and Kennel, so this wasn't racist in that the entire cast was white.
There was a painful line when there's something about them being sent.
Oh yes, of course you'll be sent to the rehabilitation facilities in Africa. Oh no, not Africa!
There's that.
Victoria really says that as if it's the worst thing in the world to be said. I don't know what Victorian English people thought of Africa, though.
Oh no, it was the dark continent, the place of savages and cannibals.
Yes.
And yet she didn't faint when she saw Toberman.
It should also be noted that they brought up the woman's attire there.
Oh yes, that was one of the great little comedy moments. Did you see how those lassies were dressed there, Victoria? Oh yes, and I think it's disgusting. So, you can never see yourself dressing that way, can you? No, of course not. And we'll kindly change the subject, please.
There we go. And you, James, your thoughts on this serial?
Yes, it had a weird kind of problem similar to someone suffered by He Who Must Not Be Named, of good ideas, but the execution being hilariously flawed. The science, for a start, was totally arse-about-face. Back arsewards, as we've discussed either before the chat or in it. In the chat. Trees produce carbon dioxide. What the fudge are you talking about there, etc. Also, motivations changing in mid-episode. The leader actually making this impassioned speech, which was repeated later by the doctor, by Peter Sallis and the Doctor. The computer is programmed not to take risks. It's programmed to survive. The leader, Clem, said exactly the same thing earlier. But you're thinking, okay, now he's going to make the life or death decision. No, it's actually Peter Sallis's character, whose name I can't remember, Henley, who does eventually make the decision and save the day. But so 1 second, as Coqui pointed out, 1 second the leader is contradicting the computer and pointing out that its reasoning is flawed. The next second, the next minute, it's the great advisor. Yes, with its strength we cannot fail. All hail the computer. So, and then there's other elements of it which aren't so totally and completely flawed. But the overall concept works better than most of the rubbish by He Who Must Not Be Named.
Sorry, I am counting this. You don't...
It does actually work as an episode still, even if pieces of it are total rubbish. And But yes, the overall theme of taking risks as opposed to just blindly obeying what the computer says or what side. There's the later serial, The Dominators. Science in the basic. It's not so much technophobia as pointing out the difficulty of science without questioning. You know, in The Dominators, they go to a society, they go to a planet where a fact is a fact. You don't question anything; it simply is. So the computer has decreed that we must wait, so we must wait. And yes, the very fact that they are willing to kill people. It's flying, as Ben said, it's flying in the face of everything that Doctor Who has stood for before this point. It's usually the nutty base commander who's willing to destroy the entire world in order to get revenge and save him, or revenge his son, or what have you, whatever it was in the 10th planet. I can't remember the specifics. And to which the Doctor proposes a sane and rational alternative. But I don't know who. I can't remember the name of the person who wrote this episode. I get the feeling that he hasn't written Doctor Who before or since.
I think yeah, you're right. I think he's new. I don't know if he might him again. Brian Hales. But
the point is, he is just as the person who wrote The Evil of the Daleks had a completely different interpretation of the Daleks, didn't quite understand Terry Nation's original vision of them as Nazis, instead painting them as the lower rank Daleks as mindless automatons. It's the same thing here. It's all about taking risks and making progress, even at the risk of even at the cost potentially of people's lives, you know, instead of just being a slave to the computer. And then as if someone's prodded him and say, hang on a second, this is a science fiction series, you can't be anti-science, or rather specifically it's anti-scientism. So they had Scar, or whatever his name was, the scavenger who absolutely despises science and technology, tries to sell the base out to the Ice Warriors, but he's useless to them. And the Ice Warriors themselves, they're just paranoid and malevolent for the hell of it, aren't they?
Well, and also,
I was going to say, yeah, because the whole point is that they're a warrior culture, but the sort of thing that they commit pointless murder, that most of it's kind of a misunderstanding and a story about...
Exactly, as I say, malevolent and paranoid for the sake of it. I almost get that, you know, they are basically like the giant bacteria in the Moon is an Egg episode. They exist solely to ramp up the tension. The threat, the actual problem, is the glacier, is the threat of Europe being crushed beneath billions of tons of ice, or the world being crushed under billions of tons of ice, and with the added problem of the spaceship, which could, the ion drive on the spaceship, which could explode. That's it. That's the threat. But you can't have that kind of nondescript threat. You can't use that kind of non-human threat, natural catastrophe, to hold up a 6-part serial, originally 6 parts, as I say, that part 2 and 3 have been reconstructed and mashed together. But, as a result of this, they have almost brought in the Ice Warriors as nothing but an added threat, something for Victoria and Jamie to deal with. Whilst the Doctor and Klempt and Penry, I think his name is, deal with the actual problem.
And Ben, sorry, we cut you off then, you were saying?
Oh, yeah. Coming in from left field like I usually do, did you guys notice the very Star Trekian second intro that they had? It was like, ooh.
Oh yeah, with the music.
Oh God, yes. I blocked it out to spare myself. Yeah.
I like it.
Well, I was going to say something cruel there, but
it was very odd.
Anyway, a few Doctor Who's from the 60s and actually even 70s have like a second intro. We've seen it before. We saw it with the War Machines. We'll definitely see it again. But yeah, this one was very Star Trek. I suppose that was very Star Trek-y music. Well, they're in direct competition by this point. Hey.
Oh yeah. They're like one comes after the other at this point.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was about to. Coqui, sorry to interrupt. Basically, what I was going to say is, if you look at the sets of Lost in Space, Star Trek, early Star Trek, and Doctor Who, at all this point, they have almost exactly the same kind of backgrounds. It's kind of funny.
Oh, I was actually going to comment on the fact that yes, they've gone from Tibet to a glacier. It's somewhere in Scotland, presumably.
Well, yeah, Jamie thought that they'd parked further up the mountain.
Yeah, so it is literally a case of, well, we've spent all of this money on fake ice and snow for the set. We might as well do 2 snow-based episodes back to back.
But don't worry, everybody, because when we get to the 70s, we've got clay pits to look forward to.
Oh boy!
Yes, and caverns.
Quite often they use the same ones. You can actually go on tours of these places, and the tour guide will actually remark on the fact that if you'd been here 20 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to move for Cybermen. But is it okay for a new topic?
Oh
well. What I was going to say real quick, which is a bit of a new topic, but I don't know if we'll talk about it much. While the science is laughable, it does have that early on that message of, I guess, ecological consciousness in the beginning. The idea that technological progress, which I'd say is the most legitimate argument that they bring about technology, it's not sustainable. While we could be creating wealth, and it may seem like just life getting better for us, the planet does have its limits.
Well, they cured world hunger.
Huh?
They said that they'd ended world hunger.
Exactly. We ended world hunger, and all of the land on which we used to grow crops were set aside for modern housing, and then one year there was no spring.
Yeah. So I do like the ecological message. A lot of people make it about overpopulation, which is sometimes a scary direction to go because people can be rather heartless when they think there are too many people. But
that was a fear of the age. There'd been purges in China around this time.
Just to counterpoint what the leader Clem said during that speech, that ecological awareness theme in the serial. Later, when the ionizer has worked and is starting to push back the glacier, he almost sounds like he's channeling Mr. Burns' episode of The Simpsons. What? Mother Nature started this battle for survival. Monsoons, famines, floods, earthquakes, other catastrophes, droughts. And now she wants to quit because she's losing, when he says, finally, the victory of science over nature. So it's just another example of the motives and the personality of the characters just fundamentally shifting from moment to moment, depending on what the scene called for, what what was required at that moment to carry the story forward. So, yes, Alex, rattle the jar. When we accuse Moffat of not watching old Doctor Who or understanding old Doctor Who, he did. He watched these episodes and took notes faithfully. he sat at the feet of the master and learned well how to completely fuck up a story.
And
oh, go ahead.
no, okay.
I was gonna say, as laughable as it is, and a lot of it does seem really inconsistent. I'm not sure what about it made it seem so entertaining about me. Maybe it was like that reptilian, oddly shaped butt. I don't know. Which, by the way, was quite amusing. But
All hail the Ice Warrior butt.
Yes, it was the weirdest shaped butt. But I thought it was, entertaining, albeit not the best told story, but I guess, the pacing, the tension, it was done well, I think. In terms of, like, mindless entertainment, if nothing else.
Again, can we shake the Moffat jar at Coqui?
Okay, that was a
It
Moffat,
makes
yeah.
no sense. It doesn't hold together as a story. Scientifically, it's a joke, but it's mindless entertainment. Moffat's ears are burning.
Right. Well, and the reconstruction, I like that they put voice narration instead of the subtitles for the narration. It made it a lot more enjoyable. So this reconstruction, the episode that was missing, I thought it was done, well. The reconstruction. This is probably this is my favorite reconstruction, actually.
It does look like it was a professional reconstruction.
Yes, it's a BBC release, yeah.
Yeah, so that is the wonderful little framing device of the computer screen at the beginning, informing us that there is a world computer informs of a massive global communications problem. Only limited pictures and sound are available.
Yeah.
The way that they saved because this one's literally got some of the actual audio missing. There's nothing for you to go by for reconstructing, hence 2 and 3 being conflated. Sorry, Ben.
Oh no, and I really like how it's straight from the BBC audio archive, and even in part 3, it's still like now visual communications coming back and all that good stuff. Actually, as a story, it's actually, besides the whole Doctor almost killing everyone, it's actually decent because you have different characters moving around, and I just wish they just had their act together.
Yeah.
But
Okay, well.
Oh, you were saying?
Sorry. I was going to move to the next topic, but if you have one last thing to say.
Oh, only that Jamie's paralysis should have been permanent, but, hopefully it's Doctor Who, so maybe it's not. Oh, and
The Doctor will have some gizmo in the TARDIS or something.
Oh, I totally forgot to mention. This is the only episode of Doctor Who where they actually show breasts on a statue. They do, technically. Also,
I'm sure there are naked statues in other episodes.
Oh yeah, there has to be a naked statue somewhere in Evil of the Daleks.
Or the Romans, or
right.
cultures that would have had. But anyway, and also, what about the monsters that don't really bother with clothes? Do alien?
Oh yeah. I mean, they explain that away in Moffat era.
Well, in this case, they weren't mammals, so they didn't have breasts. Were there any breasted aliens? We don't know if the Ice Warriors were male or female, do we?
We don't know. They could be all girls for all we know.
Or asexual, or have 5 species, or. But anyway, new topic.
Yes. Well, the Ice Warriors are technically cyborgs, and that does finally bring us neatly round to the next subject. Now, all Coqui will have seen the Ice Warriors. There's one in the new series, in the episode Cold War. Actually, Mark Gatiss, if you re-watch the episode Cold War now, it's exactly the same story as the one we just watched, but compressed into 45 minutes with one Ice Warrior and on board a Russian nuclear sub in the 80s. It's actually the same gambit, same suspicion, same cultural clash, same kind of tension. There might be the same characters.
As I say, he sat at the feet of the master.
It's Mark Gatiss.
I know. They sat at the feet of the master.
Mark Gatiss does love his nods to well, he more or less reinvented power.
But no. Nodding back and forth while making sucking noises.
Yes, power of the Daleks, number one, is kind of retold. But, so Coqui got an unsatisfying glimpse of 45 minutes of an Ice Warrior in the new series, and not especially memorable episode. Ben probably knows a bit more, but I'm going to go round. This is the introduction of an iconic monster that we will see a few times again in Classic Who and at least once in New Who. Presumably they will appear again in New Who. Of course, there are actually two types. There are Ice Lords, but there weren't any Ice Lords in this one. Whether that's a gender difference, I have no idea. It's never explored. We don't know what they do in bed, but that's true of a lot of these aliens. We don't know what Time Lords do in bed. It might be backwards, or I don't know. But anyway, so Ben, your opinion of the Ice Warriors and their introduction in this story.
The Ice Warriors were kind of scary in the beginning because you don't really know. You see like parts of hands and stuff, and then when they finally give it away, it's like, okay, because it's like the whole trope of medieval warrior coming back from the ice and attacking everybody. They even do it in Scooby-Doo. So I think everyone's just referencing Doctor Who now. And I'm like, really? That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And Coqui, your opinion of Ice Warriors and their introduction in the serial?
They look rather silly to me. Well, no, the helmet looks cool. Their face looks cool. Just the claw and their butts. Look at those butts. They're just silly. But silly is okay. Silly can be fun. And also, since you mentioned Time Lords doing stuff in bed, now I can't shake the thought of the Doctor having an ovipositor, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't know what that means, and I'm glad I don't know what that means.
You don't want to know.
How you stick it into something to lay eggs in it.
Okay, and James, opinions on the Ice Warriors and their introduction.
Just to contradict you, Alex, when you were giving us the overview before asking us our opinions, the Ice Warriors are not iconic Doctor Who villains. Doctor Who monsters. Villains, monsters, it's a fine line between the two. But the only iconic antagonists, for lack of a better term, in Doctor Who are the Cybermen and the Daleks, precisely because of the reasons which I've discussed in previous podcasts, which are missing from the Zygons, the Sontarans, the Ice Warriors, every other villain, every other antagonist that the Doctor Who tries to bring in. They're all lacking that fundamental fear, which is what made the Daleks iconic, what made the Cybermen iconic. As I say, if rather than waste time rehashing, just look back at the previous podcasts when I'm discussing them. But here, as I've already mentioned in the previous segments, they're really just there to fill the time, to create an extra threat, to humanise a threat. It could have been almost anything. The glacier is coming upon us, but there's an there's an alien device. It doesn't even have to be a spaceship. There doesn't even have to be a crew. There's an alien device there. It could be atomic, it could be ionic, or what have you. It could explode. Exactly the same threat. Exactly the same dilemma. And the story could have been wrapped up in 3 episodes. But no, you've got to have the Ice Warriors there, not necessarily as padding, but to create the action, to create the mindless entertainment, as I said before, again, being paranoid for no reason, and as Alex pointed out, murdering people for no reason whatsoever. So in terms of their introduction, no. Later, they do grow. By far, my favourite representation. My favourite Ice Warrior appearance is in the Pertwee era. The only two good episodes, the only two good serials, the Paladin stories. I think that's the name of the planet. Peladon. Thank you. And why? Paladin was the name of an ancient Christian knight, I think, something like that.
Also
but the two Paladon stories, one where the Ice Warriors have found peace and are good, heroic people. The other story in which later there's the Ice Warrior is leader of a rebel faction who wants to return to their vicious, warmongering, child-murdering ways.
Thanks for spoiler warning, asshole.
Come on, we've got, 17 years before we get round to those.
Anyway, yes, nerdy fact point. In the last episode of Doctor Who to be broadcast, the Christmas special, you may have noticed one of Patrick Troughton's sons, Michael Troughton, making his Doctor Who debut. He's one of the guys on the base. He's the guy who got sucked through the monitor because it was a nightmare. But Patrick Troughton's other son, David Troughton, we'll soon see in the Troughton era, but does appear in the Pertwee era. In fact, he appears as the king of Peladon, so we'll get to that. I think it's time for high point, low point. So Ben,
high point. Seeing the massive thing that is this set. Also, get to see the Doctor explodey things. The first time in Doctor Who history. Low point, perhaps? Maybe the fact that they're not as scary as I thought they'd be, and also they're a bit of a Plotcomanians, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and Coqui?
High point, the Doctor and crew got out of there before, anyone commented on anything. You know, they were going to say, we should thank them. Oh, where did they go?
Yes, Jamie, paralysed, could still leg it halfway up the glass, yeah.
I love that. I loved it. Low point is the leader who already acknowledged that the computer is not, its judgment is compromised, then defends it when someone else is making the exact argument, which, we've all brought up a couple of times. I was confused. I actually went back to the prior episode to make sure that I was understanding right. Was it a different person saying it? No, it was it made me mad. But yes, those are my points.
Okay, and James?
Yes, high points, gotta stick with the comedy right at the beginning when the TARDIS has landed on its side. Okay, hurry up, Doctor. Why? You're standing on my head. And just the wonderful little comedy moments scattered throughout the serial, which I absolutely adore, and the low points following on from what Coqui said, when the computer programmer, as I said in my intro, it does everything short of kneel down, worship, and grant offerings unto the great computer. It is our strength. With its guidance, we cannot fail. So, I think it was because, yes, they did kill off the anti-technology scavenger, the person who represented technophobia. The theme was more scientism, the blind faith in science and computers without questioning. I think that's what the writer was trying to go for. But again, as Ben said, he did it wrong. No, the Doctor does not risk the death of everyone in Europe, possibly the entire world, because he has a gut feeling.
Of course, you talk about the rebel or scavenger, that they also made Scottish.
Oh yes, and James. He said when he introduces himself to Jamie, "Oh, I'm a loyalist." A loyalist, It's several hundred years in the future. It's very unlikely that loyalist is going to be supporter of the House of Stuart.
Indeed, that was what I was going to say. Liking that moment, I'd say I like the tension in this story. I'm not quite sure what my low point would be. Maybe it would be the character inconsistency, or I think maybe they survived the bear a bit too easily. But in any case, my final thought is that new Skype sucks. It's a bit off topic, but at the time of recording, this is the first time I've had to do it with new Skype. Screw new Skype. And Ben, your final thought and sign off.
Final thought, this is really actually a very good Doctor Who episode. It actually changes up a few things. You're not going through the same plot convenience over and over again. And the characters kind of make progressions that just the writer kind of didn't know who he was writing for. So this would have been a great Lost in Space episode.
Okay, Coqui?
May the great hamster of prosperity find that you have enough skills to not need to needlessly kill you. Have a good one.
And James?
Yeah, fundamentally, it's so much of Troughton does seem to be the same episode back to back, but slightly different. So comparing this to the Abominable Snowmen last week, it's got the same kind of problems, but not as bad. The whole thing of the monks and the Tibetan monastery was just the framing device. So in this week, the Ice Warriors are just the plot contrivance to keep the story going, to give us something other than a glacier as a threat. The sudden shifts in the sudden, not necessarily sun, but the shifts in motivation and character, from accusing the Doctor of murder to working with him and trusting him completely. What? No, at least it didn't have the whole thing of the Gunter. That was something else I was waiting for. Even though I've seen the Ice Warriors a couple of times before, I was still subconsciously waiting for the moment when the leader would accuse him of sabotage or of colluding with the Ice Warriors or of murder or something like that. But the Gunter, this is something I really should have brought up last week. It was so obvious. The Gunter was the thing that would have given the Master the mental power to drive out the great intelligence, thus saving the day. But apparently they just forgot. The writer just forgot about it, so it was reduced to a calling card. Same kind of problem with the Ice Warriors. Just the whole serial. It was written in pieces and then stitched together, and thankfully, as a piece of mindless entertainment, it does work. So yes, it's superior to the Abominable Snowmen in some ways, but yes, they get science totally wrong. They get the Buddhist faith totally wrong. Oh, this is Moffat's favourite series of Doctor Who.
So, The Enemy of the World is one we're lucky to have. It was missing for decades, only found a couple of years ago. So, yes, in fact, we have a complete and a very nearly complete story 2 weeks in a row. So, next week we'll be watching the second Troughton to exist in its entirety. So, please join us next week, folks, when we will be discussing The Enemy of the World.